Okay, we'll start that again. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to proceed with our Board of Police Commission meeting today. We're here at Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council, and we are, you may have noticed that we're live streaming tonight's meeting. The video will be uploaded to HRM's YouTube account and will be accessible to the public. The stream will be a static live shot. PowerPoints used may be hard to see, but will be posted to the halifax.ca tomorrow on Board of Police Commissioners agenda page. So now call this meeting to order and offer that Mi'kmaq land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we're all treaty people. So before we get started, I just want to remind folks that these mics here are very sensitive. It will be important that you turn your own mic on and then turn your own mic off. We have a lot to cover and likely debate here this evening, so I will be timing the first round of commissioners speaking at 5 minutes, and we recognizing when the time is up. So just be mindful of making sure you get your points across. There's Tony. Good to have you. And then your second round is 3 minutes, and depending on how the close we are to conclusion, I can make a judgment call whether or not we need another opportunity. We're a little less formal, but we want to make sure we get through this evening's agenda. So, excuse me. So with that, we have the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Requests for added items require unanimous consent from all members of the Board of Police Commissioners present and voting. Clerk, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are no additions or deletions for the agenda today. I will note that there has been a suggestion of moving in camera up to the first item of business.
Thank you. So I'll ask committee members if there are any additions or deletions, and would ask if one member could put forward a motion potentially for us to go in camera.
I'll move that we move the in-camera portion of the meeting to the first order of business after number 3, call for declaration of conflict of interest.
Thank you, and that's Commissioner Blackburn putting that motion forward. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, but I don't think it's going to be difficult, but I have a question on
I have a question on the order of business, but I didn't know how to get your attention.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. So you second the motion for in camera?
Yep.
Okay, any questions on that? I ask for all in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. And the motion's carried. Commissioner Smith.
So, and it might be, I might have an old agenda. Is the motion for the RCMP on the current updated agenda?
Yes.
Okay. For some reason it's not on the one that I had downloaded. Just want to make sure that was
Yes,
there.
it's item number 5.1.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further additions or deletions, I will move forward with our call for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing and hearing none, move on to Halifax Regional Police 2023-2024 proposed operating budget. Oh, just 1 second. We have the clerk.
Chair Kent, I believe when the adoption of the order of business was moved, Councillor Blackburn moved that in camera we moved up to directly after item 3. We would then move to the in camera section of the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to take now the time to move in camera.
I move that we go in camera.
Thank you. And we don't need a second for that, do we? What do we do? Second, Lindell, Commissioner Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's carried. So those of us
The
who,
Board of Police Commission will now be moving to an in-camera section of the meeting. The live stream will show the movement of the room, but will be paused for all sound. Commission members can go into the in-camera meeting room behind you and the required staff for the in-camera session. We will be returning
and indulgence. We'll now move to item number 4, Halifax Regional Police 2023-24 proposed operating budget. Commissioners, what's your will? We'll need someone to put the motion on the floor, actually, debate it.
I can put the motion on the floor, Madam
Commissioner
Chair.
Blackburn,
Okay.
seconded by Commissioner
Oh, do you want me to read it out loud?
Thomas. Yes, please.
Okay. I move that, having ensured that the proposed Halifax Regional Police operating budget for 2023-24 as presented at the December 14th, 2022 and January 16th, 2023 meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners is consistent with those matters referred to in subsection 55(3) of the Police Act. The Board of Police Commissioners moves the following recommendation. 1, that Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed increase in the composition of the Halifax Regional Police as set out in the proposed service enhancements described in the revised information report dated January 10th, 2023 from Chief Kinsella to the board. And further, 2, that the Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed Halifax Regional Police operating budget for 2023-24. I so move.
Would you like to speak to that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I think I'm going to hold off for now. I do have something to say, but I'm just going to listen to the debate first and then bring up my notes to speak.
Okay, traditionally you would speak now with your 5 minutes. I'm not going to shortchange you, but
Okay.
I wouldn't, that would be the norm.
In which case then? All right. So certainly been thinking about this a lot. And I've been thinking that police budgets should go towards fighting violence and preserving community safety rather than criminalizing the predominantly social problems of drugs, traffic, mental health, and unhoused people. Even the most dedicated police officers cannot begin to solve the social issues before them every day, nor should the responsibility rest on their shoulders. We as a board have heard from many people the past few weeks. Those presentations have been passionate and heartfelt, but unfortunately most lack the key decision-making factor for me, and that's data. And I'm looking at the facts. So, fact, the population of Halifax has exploded in the last 18 months. The number of sworn officers to residents has decreased as a result. Fact, the creation of the Hate Crimes Unit came at the request of the community. It is now established and in need of dedicated officers. Allowing this work to be done off the sides of people's desks would not give it the attention it deserves. Fact, officer absenteeism is at a level not seen before, and many of those officers are off with mental health injuries. An in-house support system would get them back to work sooner. Fact, the Defund the Police report is finished and has 36 recommendations that are now being worked on. A committee is being created with representatives of the community, the province, and Justice Department to implement these recommendations. Fact, HRM will have a new public safety strategy coming to us this spring. This will include many of the programs suggested by speakers to this committee and in the Defund report. It will put us on a path to reimagining policing. For those that think this change is happening at a glacial pace, it is. But we didn't get to this place overnight, and it won't be solved overnight. You can't tear down the old without having a foundation in place for the new. And we are starting construction on the new. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry for my shortness, everybody. I think I got the short chair today, so you can't see me. I'm here. So I guess the sad thing of speaking after Commissioner Blackburn is I won't speak as eloquently, but I do really appreciate the words that she shared. So I had two aspects of what I was going to say today. There's one aspect that I can't speak to for reasons that the commission knows now. So I'm going to try my best to focus on the concerns that I had and that we can speak to today in the public session. So looking at the budget, and also thank you, Chief and folks, for getting the added information related to the more detailed financial tables. So that was very helpful to see. So actually, before I get into that, I also want to just thank the community who came out and really spoke to us, most times eloquently, but definitely we learned a lot and gained a lot of information, knowledge, and thoughtful questions for the board. And what we've seen from many members and what I wrote down is we need information. And from many of the speakers, and I won't quote them, they said we need more information. We need a budget. And I think with the new information that we got, or new-ish information that we got related to the detailed budget, I think that answers some of the questions on where on how we should be looking at the budget as a commission. The question I have for the chief is related to the extra duty piece. So again, not being able to go into too much details, when I look at the extra duty piece, Chief, and the amount that we received from that, which my understanding for 2023-24 is plus 681,000. Is that correct?
Chief Kinsella?
Thanks, Chair, or thanks, Commissioner, through you, Chair, to the Commissioner. So we have seen a dramatic increase in what I'll call the purchasing of extra duty by a number of businesses, special events, concerts, Canada Juniors, all of that. And we are, I would say, at unprecedented levels. All of the money, or not all of it, and I may turn it over to Mr. Horton in a minute to get into some details, but the majority of the money that we take in on that is paid out to the officers who are doing the work. We do have some costs for vehicles if they're associated to an extra duty, but that goes back into the maintenance and gassing and those kind of things of the vehicles. We also have an administrative fee that is currently sitting at 3%, and one of the proposals as part of the overall HRM budget reduction is to move that to 10%. That'll be in your paperwork there, Commissioner. So that's the main reason that we're seeing that. And as I say, while it generates money, we also pay it out to the officers who are doing the work. And I'm just going to ask Mr. Horton to add a couple comments in regards to any clarity on that you may.
And before you do that, how much time do I have left, Chair? So all I'll say, and I'll let Mr. Horton go, and then I'll pass it to the member, is what I think we should be doing related to this is because we know the impact that we're seeing on staffing in general, but we are also seeing a huge uptake in what we're doing extra duty. So I feel like we need to, as a board, look at how we can reallocate where those resources, and that's really up to the chief. But I think in terms of policy, that might be our role. But I'll let Mr. Horton go, and I'm going to come back later just to kind of clarify on that.
Madam Chair, through you to the board member, not a whole lot more to add there.
It's not working.
Can you speak a little more into the mic?
Pardon me.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's better.
I don't have a lot more to add there than what Chief Kinsella has provided, other than with the increase in HRPA rates, combined with the increase in jobs we're seeing, whether they're internal. The internal ones are more as a result of coming out of COVID, and there's been more special events and stuff taking place that the city's coordinating. But the other jobs are coming from external private industry. You're seeing them at the grocery stores and stuff like that. With those and the combined fact that rates have gone up for our members, we're able to show an increase in the revenue coming in for external jobs and the internal jobs, which are the events, the special events and whatnot. But we're also factoring in 1.3, almost 1.4 million for the cost to pay the officers to work those jobs. So the net isn't, I believe, we added almost 1.5 million to the revenue side and 1.376 million to the cost. So it almost nets out in the end as it is anyways.
And Chair, if I could, just a follow-up to the Commissioner's question around policy, because it's a good one, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. The extra duty policy and the one around off-duty employment, you may recall those two policies were released, I believe it was November, publicly. Those are two of the policies that are specifically mentioned in the Police Act for the board to have some consideration. So I think, Commissioner Smith, you've kind of narrowed right in on that, and that would certainly be worth some dialogue, not only to discuss, other concerns the commission or commissioner may have, but also to see what the pathway forward is in regard to those two policies.
Thank you, Chair.
Any further speakers? Commissioner Chrisley?
Thank you. So Chief Kinsella, on Friday, we received this updated budget information and financial tables. Is that right?
Commissioner, I would encourage you to make your remarks and then we can get response if you have further questions.
Well, I have a series of questions I'm going to ask. Is that all right?
Yeah, but it's not traditional that we go back and forth. Maybe you can,
Okay.
I need you to,
All right. So this document is dated January 27th. And it's a very helpful document. It's 10 pages. It lists all the various revenues and expenses associated with the police service and how those compare year over year. Unfortunately, it's less detailed than even what goes into the budget book. So, if I want to go online and I want to know how much was spent on victim services last year, I can go in the budget book, I can Control F that, I can figure out that it's the same amount of money that was spent the previous year, and I can look year over year at the amount of money that was spent on a particular unit. I could do the same thing with the mobile mental health crisis team. I could do the same thing with the traffic unit. I could do the same thing with the mounted unit. I cannot do that with this document, which I just received on Friday, which the public just received on Friday. We've heard over and over again that the public is looking for more information about the budget. The public wants to know what the line items are. They want to know the rationale for those line items. They want to know why the decision was made to keep the amount the same or to change it. I've asked Chief Superintendent Christie already about the mobile mental health crisis team. If I want to know anything about the mobile mental health crisis team, I can't use this document. So unfortunately, I'm left in the same position I was 2 meetings ago. I'm left in the same position I was last budget. This board, and by extension the public, which we are statutorily obligated to act as the conduit for, has not received adequate information to make a reasoned deliberation on the budget proposal in keeping with our duties under 55(3) of the legislation, which pursuant to 53 sub 2 of the legislation, we are statutorily required to do. We must assess the budget in its entirety, not simply service enhancements, and assess where the budget in its entirety is in keeping with our values and our duties under 55(3). And again, I do appreciate the work that went into this work paper, but it's not the level of detail that would be required to have a fulsome deliberation and discussion about those highly specific duties in the Police Act. Things like whether the delivery of policing services are in keeping with community needs, values, and expectations. So I would ask my commissioner, my commission colleagues, if a decision is to be made on this budget, it needs to be made on the information that's before the board. And I would respectfully submit that, despite the best efforts of the chief and his team, which I really greatly appreciate, the information before the board is inadequate. It's even inadequate compared to what ultimately ends up in the budget book. The budget book is a readily accessible document. I'm not sure why it's not before the board now to inform our deliberation. So again, so that's the point I'd like to make. And I'd put it over to the chief if there's any response. And I say this in a very respectful way. being fully appreciative of the work that has gone into this and the fact that this has been an iterative process over several meetings now. But I would just say in closing that I would say it's probably the number one thing that we're hearing from the public. You know, I took notes on every single person who spoke, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, a very large number of people indicated that they didn't feel as though there was adequate information to inform their consultation, right? It's a very good thing that the board is now, for only the second time in its history, consulting with the public. That's excellent. But if the board is not making decisions based on evidence, and if the public isn't being provided with the evidence to support their consultation, then unfortunately we're not in compliance with the Police Act.
Thank you, Commissioner. CAO would like to speak to it.
Thank you. My name's Kathy O'Toole, and I'm the new CAO of the Halifax Regional Municipality. Looking forward to working with the Board of Police Commissioners, particularly with respect to improving governance. The document that was referred to that was circulated on Friday was one that one of the Board of Police Commission members asked a question about on Wednesday, because it's a format that was used in previous budget years, 17-18 and 18-19. And it was a request to see whether it would be easy for us to provide that additional information. And of course, staff got right on it and circulated it on Friday. But the point I want to make, an area that, you know, I want to support the board in, is governance, because it's really up to the Board of Police Commissioners to be providing direction to staff in terms of what format you want the budget information to come forward in. So I'm going to suggest that, you know, where we're at this point in time is probably a reflection that there wasn't clear discussion earlier in the year in terms of what format would you like to receive the information, and we'd be pleased to make sure you have sufficient detail in any format you want, you know, to support future discussions.
Any further speakers?
My name is Yemi Akindoju, and I'm thinking what I'm hearing my colleague commissioner ask for is more than what would be required for us to take a decision. If you're asking for the details of a budget, what kind of details are we looking for? I think all the documents provided to date has given us a bit of in-depth to make us take a decision on the budget. They've given us what is increasing, the details of what is increasing. All other budget items are sunk from my own perspective as an accountant because they are already in operation. We're not going to go back and start to change those. We can change policies that will change figures in the future. But what we are focusing on today is what is increasing, that is the incremental cost of this budget. Does it make sense? And I think over the last few meetings, we have been given detailed information as required that would enable us to move forward. So that's just my giving here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further speakers? Motions, okay. Commissioner Smith?
So thank you, Chair. So my last comments, just on the motion on the floor, I asked that it could be broken up into two votes, if you don't mind, Chair. So I did have reasons why I wasn't going to support number one, but I can't speak to those today. But hopefully future budget meeting, I understand where the chief is coming from, needing those service enhancements, and I fully get it, but there are concerns that I have with some of them in the way moving forward. And I guess I can only say that at the moment. So I'm not going to support number one, and I will support number two because I think we need to send a budget to council, and it's reasonable in a sense. The two pieces that I wanted to speak on, and the chief hit it on the head earlier, related to the off duty and extra duty. We have the policy powers to decide where we feel we want this policy direction to go into, and we could put within that policy how much I shouldn't say how much the chief, but our thoughts on how much the chief should focus on extra duty and off duty. Because if you look at what we're hearing around the personnel need and the amount of time that we're seeing with extra duty, as a board, we could make a policy where based on XXX, this is where extra duty should kick in. So I really think, and I will bring this at our next meeting, a motion to look at that. And the other motion that I will bring at a future meeting as well, or our next meeting, is related to creating a more detailed policy for our policy manual related to the budget, direction, and timeline, how we do public consultation. Because I think we need, just for anyone, any chair, 10 years from now, who can look at our policy manual and say, this is the process that we should be following. This is the dates that we need to have these meetings by. This is the information we should receive. And we can put that in detail in our policy manual as a board, because we have other things in detail, and I think we can do the same. So those are two motions I'll be bringing forward, and I will support number 2 in the motion and won't support 1. And I wish I could say more, but I can't at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Giles?
Thank you, Chair. I've listened with interest to my colleagues' presentations and to the presentation of the chief. Very respectfully, I'm going to move for a deferral of both this debate and the vote on the motion. I'm minded of 2 things, 2 lessons that my late mother taught me, one of which is haste makes waste. More on a point of personal privilege than anything else, I'm going to seek the deferral for a number of reasons. I'm respectfully of the view that insufficient budgetary information has been shared with me.
Commissioner Giles, can you put that motion on the floor before you speak to it, or are you?
I thought I
trying-
did.
are you-
I thought I did.
No, you don't have a seconder yet. Seconded by Commissioner Critchley. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm respectfully of the view that insufficient budgetary information has been shared with me to permit me to exercise and execute my role as it is defined pursuant to the provisions of Section 53(1) and 2 of the Police Act and Section 55(3) of the Police Act. All of us know the provisions of those sections require introspection on our part as regards any aspect of our approval of such budget as we may be prepared to recommend to council. And though I am a support your local police kind of person, though I generally speaking am more of a law and order person than perhaps some others, in part because of my age and my natural conservatism, and in part because of my upbringing, I cannot, in good conscience, signify my approval for something which I do not understand. And more importantly, which I have not been given any reasonable opportunity to even try to understand. Such detail as I have received, and it is scant, came today. I appreciate that it was sent earlier. It came to me today. And were I not myself part of the process, I would not believe it. Against the backdrop of those general comments, there are some facts to bear in mind. We have 2 budget presentations, one in mid-December and one in mid-January. They were the same presentations and covered essentially the same asks. $7.2 million more or less, $650,000 more or less, which was for new services, which I confess at first blush made some, perhaps some significant sense to me, and the rest to cover collective agreement pay rises, which are unfortunately due in this coming year. But all starting from the perspective that the past budget was just fine as it was, and of course did not need any tinkering. Well, in my respectful submission, that is not a budget process, at least not consistent with any kind of budgeting process I have ever had anything to do with. And as a matter of fact, not to be unduly crass, it seems to me to be rather an end run around a proper budgeting process, especially one which statutorily entails respect for the public purse, and respect for the advancement of the community generally, and the regularization of law and order through law enforcement within the community. Now, I could go through my initial concerns with such budget details as I have. Commissioner Critchley has already done some of that, and I'm not going to take my time to do that. But I haven't had time to look at what's been presented. let alone study it in detail. And thus I feel that what I'm being asked to do is an abrogation of my responsibilities and the abrogation of the responsibilities of anyone being asked to do the same thing. I will be supporting deferral, and I will not be supporting the budget.
Thank you. Any speakers on the deferral motion? Commissioner Blackburn?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will not be supporting deferral at this time. I'm not sure how much more information we can get. I'm just looking at the budget packet or the meeting package that we received, and item number 4, I do believe, attachment 4. What is it? 230130 BOPC 4 PDF in the package. You go through that and it's a line by line. You can see exactly how much was spent on equipment rentals, facility rentals, advertising, salaries, supplies, legal fees. So I'm not sure how much more information would be required from the chief or HRP in general to form a decision. And I completely get that Commissioner Giles did not receive some vital information until today, and I completely understand that. But I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the need for more line by line information when it's all there in that attachment. So I won't be voting in favor of a deferral at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Akindoju?
I just want to follow with the last speaker, and just to make it a little bit easier for this process. Therefore, I'll be asking for what other line items are required. I would expect and respectfully ask my colleague commissioner to please highlight what is needed such that we can be a little bit more efficient if we have to defer this, such that next time we'll not have to go through this process. I would like to know what we have and what we do not have, and or better put, what is expected in the next meeting if this is deferred. Thank you.
Commissioner Critchley?
I mean, I guess I would say, with the greatest respect to my commission colleagues, there's a large amount missing, right? I raised the point already that with a single line item reading salaries, we have no idea how much is spent on victim services this year, unless we assume it's the same as the amount that was spent last year. And we have no rationale, no information provided in support as to why the need for, why the amount for victim services should stay the same this year as it was last year. So unless, to the questions raised by my two commission friends, mobile mental health crisis, mounted unit, traffic unit, none of these items are readily available to me in the budget information that's been presented to date. I can't make a reasoned deliberation about why the amount of money for a certain unit should remain the same as it was last year. No information has been provided in that regard. Unless, to maybe Commissioner Giles' point, unless you assume that the budget last year was all well and good, there was no issues with it whatsoever, it was completely in keeping with our community values, needs, and expectations, then how could you arrive at the conclusion that just carrying that budget over from one year to the next would meet our duties under the legislation to review a budget? The problem is that the same discussion happened last year. At last year's budget, we only reviewed the service enhancements. The budget from the year prior carried forward to that year. So there's never a fulsome discussion of the budget in its entirety. And I appreciate my friend Commissioner Blackburn's point that, here now I have an understanding of the expenses as itemized, but the salary item is listed as one item. That's 85% of the entire budget. And I guess what I would respectfully is just compare the amount of information that we received about the proposed service enhancements and the rationales for those, how they fit into the strategic plan, what the specific needs they met, what the evidence was in support of that, why it was, requested this year as opposed to previous years, why it was prioritized relative to other potential service enhancements. So compare the amount of information that was received in respect of those service enhancements with every other aspect of the budget. To Commissioner Giles's point, we've received information about $7.2 million of a $95 million budget. That's 7.5%. You would not make a reasoned deliberation about anything if you were aware that you only had 7.5% of all the information that you required. So again, I would urge my commission colleagues, not just in the interests of inefficiency or slowing down the process to support the deferral motion, but to allow the chief to and allow this board to really meet its statutory duties for what is frankly going to be the first time, because this process has carried forward year over year where a budget is assumed to be fine and then carried over the next year such that only the service enhancements are discussed. That's not an appropriate process as outlined in the Police Act. And to the point raised by the CAO in terms of, I want to support the board in terms of governance and in terms of improving this budget process. In March 21st of last year, I requested a staff report requesting an update to the entire budget process to ensure we were in compliance with the chief. There was a request at that time, and the chief and I agreed it would be valuable to have in that timelines, information requested, requirements for public consultation. That staff report actually only came back to the board after first going to council. It outlined a two-step process that would first look at staffing numbers and then the budget as a whole. And we haven't even followed that new process. Not saying that the process as presented in that staff report was in keeping with the requirements of the Police Act, but even the process outlined in that staff report, which came to council in November, is not one that we're currently complying with. We're looking at the budget as a whole. Even the wording of the motion of itself is not in compliance with the Police Act. The wording reads that we would be approving the operating budget. A plain language reading of the Police Act says that we approve a budget. A budget includes operating and capital items. So I'm just not sure how a motion was made last year in March, and yet still we're at this point now where we're having these fundamental debates about what we should be doing as a board.
Kathy?
Yes. If it does get deferred, having direction, as Commissioner Yemi suggested, in terms of what additional level of detail is required would be helpful. If it is a salaries breakdown by cost center, that's something that's easily provided. With respect to why changes are traditionally the focus of budget, and this board may operate a little differently than some other boards and commissions, but there is an expectation that board members are exercising financial due diligence throughout the year, reviewing budgets, projections, and actuals. So there may be an inherent assumption on the part of staff that there is some knowledge of the base budget. With respect to what happens in the process and what the art of the possible is, my understanding is that because of bylaw P100, that council is asking for the Board of Police Commissioners' direction on budget. If this debate does not get carried out before the police budget or municipal budget as a whole gets decided, council can make an allowance for what amount it deems sufficient for policing. And then the Board of Police Commissioners would be dealing with approval of how that amount of money gets allocated to different programs and services.
Marty?
The only thing I would add here, am I on? No?
Yes.
Is to follow up on the CAO's point. If you look at the legislation doesn't say what should be involved in the budget. That's an accounting question. But what it does say of interest is it says the board shall cause the chief to prepare a budget. And I take from that is that it's not necessarily something coming directly from the chief. I think the direction as to what's required comes from the board. I think that's what's meant by the phrase cause the chief to prepare a budget. So I think that's helpful in terms of the process. Beyond that, it's a county question of what constitutes a budget.
My chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Akintoju?
Thank you very much. I've had commissioners raise some technical issues here. When you talk about budget and you talk about capital and operating, this commission, this board is talking about operating budget, not capital budget. We do not approve capital budget here. We only approve the operating budget. So we need to have a clear understanding of the process of what we need to do. I think HRM does approve the capital budget. But if we need clarification about that, the CEO is here to provide that clarification before we go into further discussion.
I'm going to defer to the CFO on that.
Jerry Blackwood?
Oh, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Jerry Blackwood, CFO. So just with respect to comments on the capital budget, and I think we've gone over these quite a few times in the last few years. With respect to the capital budget, it is a centralized approach, okay? So for example, police vehicles, the chief does not have the capital budget. He does not have authority for those capital accounts, right? It's centralized within property, fleet, and environment. So those capital budgets have been presented here as in the chief's presentation. I think the two presentations we had, there was a slide on capital. I did explain that it is a centralized approach to how we deliver capital. So the owner of the fleet vehicles, for example, that is in the corporate fleet department, not in the police department. As a level of transparency, that information has been provided to the board. Certainly can ask any questions with respect to any questions you may have on the capital items, but they have been disclosed. There are a few capital accounts that are within the chief's authority, and they're mostly, I think, around some equipment purchases. They're small capital accounts, but they have been provided. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not going to defer. I'm not going to support the deferral only because I think we are in need of a bigger overhaul of this discussion in this process. And I don't believe deferring this is actually going to get to the place where we need to be. And I mentioned it earlier just around, I think we need to, within our policy manual, set out a clear guideline on how we accept the budget, but also how the budget gets presented to us through the year. Because as mentioned, we do get quarterly updates, and I tried to find the timeline, but we do get quarterly financial updates from the chief. And those we could ask to be more detailed. So we are having that continuation of understanding where the financials are, because they are very high level. So maybe that's also within how we look at how we receive the budget, is we also revamp how we receive our quarterly updates. So I feel that, yeah, there are aspects of it that we don't have today, but I don't think deferring this is actually going to get us to a place where we're going to have sufficient information. I think we need to overhaul our budget, our budget process that includes not just what the chief presented to us, but how we also receive the information. So I don't know I don't feel that the deferral is actually going to change the fact that we need to be part of that change that's needed to receive the budget. So that's why I can't support it. I agree that we need more information and we need better information, but I don't think a deferral actually does what we're hoping it's going to do, because the information is in front of us. And I just don't know what difference it's going to make, honestly. So I'm not going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I still
just
think there's a question. Sorry.
One moment. You've spoken twice. I haven't had a chance to speak first, and there are others that might want to speak second before we go to the third round if we need it. Are there any other second rounds, or I can have my first opportunity to speak to it? Okay, thank you. So I'm not going to support the deferral. I absolutely, and I think that many of you who were part of our considerations of whether or not I would be the next chair, I outlined very clearly that we need to strengthen our structure and our processes for the work that we do here. Already had some of those conversations. CO has spoke to them. Commissioner Smith has spoke to them. We absolutely can strengthen all of this process. But what I come back to tonight, similar to Councillor Blackburn that she referenced, is, and actually in our legal counsel, is that, you know, we cause the chief to create a budget, and he does that. What we have then to do, sorry, that one's telling me I'm done, but I'm not. Is we give him direction about what we want him to bring. And we've done that. Unfortunately, it fell short of what would be a better process, in my opinion. It fell short of what our commissioners are saying this evening would be beneficial for a better process. And to be fair, we are, as commissioners, we've been on this in these conversations, you know, around what do we need, and we were, and the chief was responsive, and the CAO was responsive when we got that information about what was needed for this year. We have a responsibility to move this budget along. I feel like I have far more in this second attachment to make a decision this evening. I'm not going to agree to defer. Again, I absolutely believe that we can improve on this, but we need to work with our CFO, our chiefs, our CAO, and all those that have an interest in how we do this process. We're not going to achieve, as Commissioner Akindoju did mention, we're not going to achieve that in the next week or two, even if we were lucky enough to get that move forward in the budgeting process. We have what we have. We asked for what we asked for. We got what we asked for this year. And we'll look for a better process for next year. Thank you. Anyone else for second round? Commissioner Giles.
It pains me to say this to my commission colleagues, but it seems to me quite candidly that we're seeking expediency over good governance. And quite frankly, my big fear is we'll have the same discussion this time next year. We are saying we have an imperfect process, but we're on a timeline, so we'll adopt it, and we'll hope to have a better process as the year goes on. I think that's an appallingly short-sighted view of what our governance responsibilities are as set out by the provincial government.
Commissioner Akindoju, for a third time, I'm going to give you a minute or so.
I'm not going to agree that I'm speaking for the third time because my question wasn't answered for the second question. The question was, and I'm referring back to Jerry, are we on the mandate of approving a capital budget or an operating budget? And I'll give you an explanation, because Harry mentioned that by the session this and that, budget means capital and operating. But if our mandate on this board is specific on operating budget, then we're looking at operating budget. Why I'm going to go back to Jerry, was that he said there's some little capital budget. From my understanding, a capital budget is a capital budget. An operating budget is an operating budget. Where we have some things going in between, I need clarification on that. However, to draw a bit of more light into a capital budget, because it's historical, but an operating budget is sunk within a period of 12 months or your fiscal year. So we're considering what's going to happen in the subsequent year. I've had a lot about process here. I agree with that. We need to be trained. We need to understand the process of budgeting. so that we can look at the cons and the pros of an operating budget. We have last year and we have this year. We can ask questions on variances and have a further understanding of that. But today is not the day. Today is for us, based on the information, all the information or data presented to us, for us to be able to move forward on this budget so that HRM can continue. So there's a clause here. I guess our mandate is on the operation budget. This is my understanding, and that's what I want to vote upon.
Thank you. Any further points? Thank you.
If I could speak. Just as a point of clarification in terms of the role of the Board of Police Commissioners, the capital budget is provided for information. The Board of Police Commissioners does have a role. You don't need to approve it, but if there is a thought that it's insufficient to meet police requirements, that would certainly be something that the Board of Police Commissioners should be expressing to the municipality to be considered in the budget process. So although no approval on capital is required here, if the Board of Police Commissioners has feedback on, sufficiency, whether it's too much or too little, that's relevant feedback that can be submitted to the municipality. And just on another note, I want to confirm one point with the CFO. We have received budget information, and the Board of Police and Commissioners has met to receive budget information on January 11th, 16th, and now today on the 30th. We have received only one request for additional supplemental information, I believe, which was the one from Commissioner Smith. Can you just confirm that is the case and there have been no supplemental requests for information that have been unaddressed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the CAO, that is correct. There has been no other request for supplemental information. Thank you.
Thank you. Question has been called. All in favor of deferral, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Sorry, we're now on the main motion. We have had a request to split the motion. At this point, are there any further points of clarification or debate to speak to it? I have not had an opportunity, so I'll take this opportunity now. I am certainly happy to split this. I will be supporting this budget. What I too completely understand the kinds of concerns, and this is in keeping with Commissioner Blackburn's points around concerns the public have made. There was a lot of work and a lot of energy put into the what is termed the defund report. There's a lot of work being done in the public safety strategy within HRM that is considering that report. The policing reviews, the input from the public, policy development and directives of council, the Department of Justice, the province, the feds, the federal government. There's so many jurisdictions that are looking at new ways to detask perhaps the role of the policing services to bring it back to those core pieces and core service delivery that originally it was, back to a time when they didn't have the complications of the mental health and addictions and the many layers of complexities of that, which then impacts the human resource piece. And I think that there's a general acceptance that that's the direction we're all going. The fact remains that we have a policing service that needs to be properly resourced. Our chief has told us, we've been given information on it, we've been able to review it and digest it, as is telling us the need for change. He's brought his information regularly, as Commissioner Smith has identified. in some of our previous meetings. So I know we have some commissioners who were not necessarily part of all of that, and that's unfortunate. But for this year, in anticipation that we can develop new and reimagine policing in the future and public safety. I think that we should be referring to it as reimagining our public safety, our partnerships, our delivery models. That needs to happen, and that is in motion. In the meantime, we have our police and services that need to be resourced. Policing is not going to go away in society. Policing is needed in society. And we have a responsibility to outfit and resource and accommodate the kinds of needs that our members, our service personnel have when they have the impact of what they're doing on their personal health, for instance. We have the impact that it has to consider on how we deliver policing services in a way that our public have faith in it. And that's not, I don't believe we're there where we can say we can't resource yet fully what the police need in anticipation of a new change next year or in 3 years. So I'm supportive of this motion. I feel comfortable that I have enough information to do that. And I certainly look forward to any further debate that we have on it. And yeah, so, but that's good for me. Thank you. Any further points of debate? Question has been called. We're going to split this vote. So the first motion is that Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed increase in that having ensured that the proposed Halifax Regional Police operating budget for 2023-24 as presented at December 14th, 2022, January 16th, 2023 meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners is consistent with those matters referred to in subsection 55(3) of the Police Act. The Board of Police Commissioners moves the following motion, following recommendation. That Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed increase in the composition of the Halifax Regional Police as set in the proposed service enhancements described in the revised information report dated January 10th, 2023 from Chief Kinsella to the board. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Motion failed. Section 2, that Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed Halifax Regional Police operating budget for 2023-2024. Those in favor? Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Does anyone need go ahead, Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if perhaps the clerk's office or chief, I'm not sure, can sort of walk us through next steps so that now we have a budget that has gone forward that will not have the increase in composition. Is that, if I'm understanding that correctly, that's what will be forwarded on to regional council for Friday? Just wanted to confirm what the next steps along the path are. Thank you.
Do you want that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Commissioner Blackburn. So that's correct. The operating budget will move forward to Regional Council with the 2 reductions that the chief has proposed will not be included. So they will not be tabled at council. So that will be going on this Friday.
Okay. And a follow-up to that, if I could, Madam Chair. Sure.
Marty, could you add to that?
I would only add to that the way the budget comes forward to council, it's council that determines the composition of the force under Section 35 of the Act. And so it's ultimately would be council decision at council decide what the composition will be. So that'll be a decision that's left for council, right? But basically the recommendation would not be coming forward from this board for it.
Right. But any one counselor could take that presentation and move a motion at council saying, I want,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Chair. And that was one of my questions for clarification. And I'm also just wondering if we're done with that, if I can move on to the next item. All right, so I'll put that on the floor. I lost it, sorry. That the Board of Police Commissioners recommend the Halifax Regional Council approve Halifax District Royal Canadian Mounted Police resource request for additional 4 frontline uniform resources for the 23-24 fiscal year, and that the Halifax District Royal Canadian Mounted Police resource request for additional uniform resources for 2024, 2025, and 25-26 fiscal years be considered during Regional Council's 24-25 and 25-26 budget deliberations.
Seconded by Councillor Blackburn. Commissioner Blackburn, sorry.
So I'll just continue. So the reason why I brought this forward for 1 year is if you look at the presentation that we received from the RCMP, it very clearly outlines, and thank you for all the information that you provided, it very clearly outlines the need for these resources for our region. And if you look at the population growth and the amount of region that RCMP cover and the amount of complement that they receive, have received in the past and to now, I think there is a rationale that we look at giving the resources asked for the upcoming year. What I don't think we should be doing is looking for the future years, 24, 25, and 25, 26, only because we have some very important studies coming forward. We have the police transformation study, we have the public safety strategy renewal, we have the provincial policing standards review, which is ongoing with the province, and we also know the mass casualty report will be coming forward, and I think there's a few others that Commissioner Christie mentioned as well. So I think we should look at the future years when we have these reports in front of us and we understand how that will affect our policing in general, but also the RCMP. But we do also need to realize that there is a significant growth in our municipality, and the information that was provided in front of us showed that there is a need for those resources today. So with that, that's why I think I feel we should send council this recommendation for the 1 year. Obviously, council can decide to do what they want, as mentioned, but I think from the board, I would recommend that we send a positive approval for the first year, understanding there's so much in the pipeline for future years. So with that, that's my comments.
Any further? Commissioner Akindoju.
I totally echo what the commissioner has said. With a slight adjustment, if it's possible, rather than 1, I would consider 2, simply because of the future changes that may cause a bit of structural adjustment in those with the police. But rather than 1, I would say I would suggest if we can consider 2 years, so that at least it allows for planning. Thank you.
Any further? Wait. Before I go there, would the mover consider that a friendly or?
That would be different from what's on the floor. Happy to have discussion if you want to put on an amendment, but it wouldn't be friendly because it'd be different from what we're considering today.
Thank you. Commissioner Critchley.
Thanks. Just want to say, fully in support of Chair Smith's reasoning. I don't think it makes sense to work on 3-year timelines where there's so much coming in the near future. You know, Chair Smith's already referenced a lot of things: a policing transformation study, public safety strategy, mass casualty commission report, legislative changes to the Traffic Safety Act, legislative changes to the Voluntary Psychiatric Treatment Act. Very, very large number of changes that it would not be prudent to work on a 3-year timeline in light of. So again, I would echo Chair Smith's comments, or sorry, Commissioner Smith's comments.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just wondering if Commissioner Akindoju wants to put the amendment on the floor. just before we do that.
No, that's fine with me. If 1 year is good, that's fine with me.
I heard a call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried.
Commissioner Giles, on that last vote, was your vote in favor or against? Thank you.
Just a question for the clerk. 6.1, that was in relation to the in-camera that we already have done? Or- Yeah.
Commissioner Blackburn has a ratification motion.
Commissioner Blackburn, ratification motion on this
Correct, yes.
in-camera? Thank you.
Yes, I move that the Board of Police Commissioners adopt the direction provided in camera in private at the January 11th? 30th, sorry, January 30th, 2023 Board of Police Commissioners meeting. I so move.
Seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Thank you, and that will conclude our meeting. We have, can I have a motion to adjourn? Move to adjourn, thank you. And we had our supper brought in, so if anyone is here and still would like to enjoy some of it, feel free. We have it just there on the side. You might want to take it and go. We don't want to hold up staff and the room, but feel free to have a bite. Just don't get in the way of the commissioners who asked for it.